about the international paper or book, and for sure, the noise in the English book is, I think, is much better than many Vietnamese book for a cell biology course. So we will start the course now. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Nhung, Hoàng Thị Mỹ Nhung. I'm now the head of cell biology department in a faculty of biology, and also I am the course coordinator for this cell biology course. Together with me, teach in this course are Dr. Trần Đức Long from the genetic department and Dr. Hoàng Thanh Vân from Vinmec Institute of Stem Cell and Gene Technologies. I think you already heard about the Vinmec Institute because it's quite famous, involving in the application of stem cell technique and gene technologies in the healthcare. So these are the lecturer for this course. I also note the email of each lecturer in these slides. So whenever you have any question or query or something want to discuss with us outside of the lessons, you can email to this address, and we are pleased to reply to all of your questions. For the material of this course, I mean about the book and the paper and any material involving in the course, I mentioned here the main textbook for the course named Essential Cell Biologist. So this book was set up for the as a main textbook for this course because they are quite easy to understand. In fact, the English, the grammar, the vocabulary, or the sentence in this book is quite easy to understand for the student compared to the other textbook. Also, the content in this book is very interesting and updated. This book is already in the library. I think it's the library of the university, and you can borrow the book from the library. I don't know if you already have this book in your hands because the number of the book is quite limited, and I think there is about maybe 30 book in the library. So and this year, this semester, I teach the cell biology course for 3 class, and the number of students is about more than 100 students. So I think you have to be quick to have this book for you. Another textbook I would like to recommend for you to read is the Word of the Cell. This book also is very interesting, and also, however, they are a little complicated, and the way of present is a little complex. It's a little difficult to understand. So, if you have a good English basic, I think it's better for you to read this book. Also, essential cell biology, I think it's also enough for you for this course. If you can understand and if you can read everything in this book, is quite enough for you. On the other hand, we also have the other book which is written in Vietnamese, so it maybe help you to understand better for the thing we teach you during the course. So the first is the book of sinh học phân tử của tế bào. This book is already translated in Vietnamese, and this is also a famous book for all of the biological students all over the world. So this book was written by Professor Harvey Lodis at MIT, And the Professor Loris, he is very famous in the biologist, and he also the supervisor of some Vietnamese student, and he is very good impressed a Vietnamese student, and from his student he understands that in Vietnam it is very it is not easy for the student to have an opportunity to read the book from uh, the I mean the real book, the hardcore of the book, something like that. So he agreed for his student to translate his book into Vietnamese in order to give them to every Vietnamese student. So this book now is present in every, I think, bookstore. You can buy them from many bookstores around the university or in anywhere in Hanoi. But the matter is that the price of this book is quite, I think it's not cheap, about 300,000 Vietnamese đồng for one how to say, because this book they contain five small book. I forgot the word, sorry. Name is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for this course, you can focus on the number 2 and the number 3. Sorry, number 3 and number 4. I think our course focus on number 3 and number 4, so you can buy these two chapter for this book, maybe enough for this course. Another book is the Bài Sinh học of Philip, also translated by Professor Nguyễn Mộng Hùng. Professor Hùng also the member of our department, and he also famous about the stem cell and embryologists. And the book Biologist by Philip also is very popular for the biological student, even at high school. I think in many high schools they use the book biology to teach the student. So maybe some of you already have read this book. And number 3, the cytology, tế bào học, written by Professor Nguyễn Như Hiền and Trịnh Xuân Hậu, also the old member of our department. Or the cell biology textbook by Professor Nguyễn Như Hiền, giáo trình sinh học tế bào, is also a good reference book for you to learn in this course. So that is all the material involving in the cell biology course, and I hope that you will have those books for you. If in case you cannot borrow the book from the library, the Essential Cell Biologist, so I think you can have another way to find the book from the internet, the ebook from internet. Of course, it is not free, and there are some way to find down this book, the ebook from internet. Because of some issues, so I cannot give you the address of this. How to say, the address to find out this ebook, but I think you can ask. I think you can ask your the other student from the other grade, the other class, to know how to find out the ebook for you, or I can send the way to the monitor of the class, and then you can so the other student in the class to find out the ebook for each of you. The ebook of this Essential Cell Biologies now is upgraded to the 5th edition. So you can find out this edition for your study. It will be about the evaluation of the student for this course. You will have 3 main evaluation. So these are the evaluation will based on the exams happens through the class. You will have the small exam during the class during each lesson. For example, for today during the time I teach you, I will give some question, and the question may be appear in the Google Classroom. So you have to come into the Google Classroom and you have to finish to complete your question. You have to answer your question or complete your assignment on the in the Google Classroom. So the point or the mark you get from each question will be counted in your exam. And after 7 weeks, you will have the midterm exam. And at the end of the semester, you have the final exam. And each exam will count different parts for your total points for this course as presented in the slide. So I think this also very familiar with you because these are the course you already learned. They also have this type of exam during the class. For the course topic, we have 15 weeks in this semester, and for each week will correspond to each different topic as I listed here. So this column is about the topic for each week, and this column is a correspond the week, and in this column is about the lecturer who responsible for each topic during the class. Today and the 2 weeks after, I will teach you about the introduction part and about the membrane, the cell membrane. And in the 4th week, you will learn about the nucleus and chromosome by Dr. Trần Đức Long and Dr. Hoàng Thanh Vân. I'm sorry, this is a little mistake. Nucleus and chromosome will be taught by Dr. Hoàng Thanh Vân. I think this topic you already knew something basic about the nucleus and chromosomes. Maybe you will wondering what is new about the nucleus and chromosome compared to what you already learned in the high school. But I think you will see a new version of nucleus and chromosome during the lesson of Dr. Hoàng Thanh Vân because it will mention about in detail about the structure and also about the transits of the chromosome and the nucleus during the cell cycle or during the lifetime of the cell. And in the week 5, you will learn about the intracellular compartment. That means about the cell organelle. This is also quite familiar topic for you. And this will be taught by Dr. Trần Đức Long, the intracellular compartment. And I think in this topic, he will concentrate mostly about the organelle, which is surrounded by the plasma membrane. So that is why they call the intracellular compartment inside the cell. In the week 6 and 7, you will understand about the intracellular transport. I think maybe this topic is new for you. During this topic, you will understand about how the cell can transport the protein from this part to the other part, or how the cell can recognize and sorting protein after it's synthesized inside the cell, or even during their synthesizations. So it is quite dynamic process inside the cell. And also you can see that this process inside the cell is it is quite similar to how we produce and transport the product in our real life. In some way, we can say that our real life is copy from something happened inside the cell. So, in week 6 and 7, you will know about the intracellular transport. And after week 7, you will have the middle term exam in week 8. Hopefully, you will have enough time to get all the knowledge from the 7 week and have a good exam and a good mark for this exam. In the next part of the semester, the topic will concentrate on the cell signaling. Cell signaling is a very complicated process inside the cell, and also it is a very difficult to understand. If you read about the research paper, you will see that in every process, in every activity of the cell, they always try to understand about the signaling pathway involving in all of these process and activities. And the molecule inside the cells, they can interact to each other, and one molecule can interact with several other molecules and play several functions in each process, in each activity of the cell. So together they connect and make a network of a molecule in the cell signaling. To understand the real function or the correct function of each molecule in each process requires knowledge and many cellular techniques that you have to understand and you have to know to discovery about the function of each molecule inside the cell. So for the cell signaling part in this course, we just give you some main or very basic function of some receptor on the cell surface involving to the signaling transduction inside the cell. And of course, you have to read many material, many textbook and many paper to understand well about each process you want to know. For the next topic is about the cell communication. So somehow cell signaling also involved in the cell communication. But in this part, the cell communication also can understand in different way, and mostly in a physical way. That means the contact of two cells and the agents two cells. That means the two cells that stay next to each other. So cell communication mainly focus on the epithelial cell. That's the cell, they have very small distance between each other, and they develop some kind of structure that they can contact to each other and make a sheath of cell that play function as a protection of the body or the exchange some molecules through each other by some structures such as the gap junction. So you will understand many types of the junction between the cell in this lesson. The next part is about the cytoskeleton system. So for the cytoskeleton system, it involving in the three main part of filament protein inside the cell, such as tubulin, it's microtubule made up from tubulin and actin filament and intermediate filament. So these are the three main type of the filament build up the cytoskeleton system in the cell. Also, you will understand about the other protein we can interact to the cytoskeleton system and control the work of the cytoskeleton system. One of the main functions of the cytoskeleton system is involving to the cellular movement. So you can see the cell can move like they can walk or somehow like they can run or roll. So how the cell can do this kind of physical movement, it depends on the cytoskeleton system inside the cell and the signal they receive, also how the molecule inside the cell can control the cytoskeleton and make the move of the cell. In the three last week, you will understand about the cell cycle. So in the cell cycle, it's somehow like the picture, the whole picture that you can put every topic and every activity that you already learned about the cell into one. So you will understand when and where this activity happen inside the cell, and which molecule control all of this action, all of the activity or the cell behavior. Um, so cell cycle will give you the answer of that. And during the cell cycle, one phase is very dynamic. For the cell is mitosis. That means the cell divisions. So in this part, you will see how the cell can divide and what is the main contribution of the cytoskeleton system to the mitosis, to all the activity in the mitosis phase of the cell cycle. So that is the topic for the cell biology course, and we hope that during the after all of this topic, you will have the basic knowledge about the cell biologies, and it will help you to understand about the cell and can maybe give you some idea to do the research for the cell. Do you have any question about this part, about the topic, about the exam, the evaluation, or the material involved in the cell biology course? Or do you want to have, or do you have any comment for that?
Dạ đến giờ thì chưa ạ.
Okay. Yeah, because it's just the main how to say, a general information about the course. Maybe you want to know more about the cell. Maybe you already read something more about the topic involving in the cells. We can maybe you want us to teach more about that. So if you want something like that, just tell us, okay? Okay. So now we will go to the introduction part to cell biology. So maybe you already have to listen or hear about the cytologies and cell biologies. So what is the difference between the cytologies and the cell biologies? Have you ever heard about the cytologies? Do you understand the word cytologies?
Cô có thể hỏi lại bằng tiếng Việt được không ạ?
Và tiếng Việt thì rất là rõ ràng là tế bào học và sinh học tế bào. Đúng không? Các bạn nghe về tế bào học bao giờ chưa nhỉ? Okay, so maybe you haven't heard about the cytologist. Maybe this word is used in the past, mostly in the past. Um, for example, in our generation, my generations, um, as the university, when I was at the university, I learned cytology, not cell biology. So cell biology is teach, I think, about around 20 years. So cytology, in fact, is about the description of the cell. That means they will tell you what is a cell, how many organelles it contain, and where the organelles stay inside the cell, and what is the function of the cell. Very little and various generations. But for the cell biologists not only tell you about the cell structure, but also about the cell function, the cell activities, the cell behaviors, and how to say, about how the cell work. Of course, if you want to understand how the cell work, you have to understand about the cell structure and the cell function. So we can say the cell biology, however, sometimes in some way, it is more interesting for the learner to understand about the cell than the cytologist. And in this slide, you can see the first question: what is life? Okay, maybe sometime you also have this question in your mind or in your head. What is life? So I think there is many ways to answer the question: what is life? Life is to breathe, to live, to grow up, to do the action, right? And many ways to answer this question. But in the biological way, life is a thing contained or made up by the cell or made up from the cell. And the cell is a basic unit of biology, and also cell is a fundamental unit of life. So the cell and life or the living things is involved to each other. And to understand the life, that means understand the cell, you need to know about the cell biology. So cell biology, the main purpose of cell biology is to answer the question how cell work. So simply, it is the main or the aim of the cell biology. So do you know who is a scientist who discovered the cell? Do you remember? Maybe this picture will help you to remember about the scientist and about the time the cell was discovered.
Robert
Was
Hooke
he,
đúng không cô? Yes, cô.
was
Yes.
he also the one who invented the microscopic glass?
Robert Hooke.
Yes. Robert Hooke, yes. This scientist, his name is Robert Hooke. Uh, he is he was also the inventor of microscope. But remember that the microscope during this time is was invented by many scientists, and Robert Hooke is not the first scientist who invented the microscope, but he also invented his own microscope, as you can see in this picture in the upper image here. So this is a microscope invented by Robert Hooke, and this is the draw of what he saw through his microscope here. So this is what he saw. He draw all the things he saw through the microscope. Um, so Robert Hooke, he takes a piece of the cork lens envelope of the cork lens, and he put under the microscope in this part here, and he looks through the objective, and he find out this structure. So, where is the cell in this picture?
I think the cell are those that look like rectangle that align with each other right there.
Oh, yes, you're correct. So Robert Hooke, he made a thin slice of cork, and when he looks through the microscope, he find out something like the small rooms into the in the sample or in the slice, as you already described. So he called this thing, or he called this a small room, and in the ancient Greek, it called the cell. The cell. So the cell, it means the tiny room or the small room. So the word cell was given first by Robert Hooke based on what he observes on the cork lens slice through his microscope. Okay, so thank you, Ming, right? Your name. And who is the answer about the name of this scientist?
It was cow. It was cow. Booby cow.
Okay, thank you, Ming. Cow and Ming. Yes. I have to ask because so I can write down your name. But Robert Hooke is the first scientist gives the name of cell for the objective he observes or the subject he observed on the cork lens slice. And the study was taken in 1665. That means the 17th century. It's quite very far from now. But the thing he observed, the cell he observed, is a living thing. It means the living cell or the dead cell. What do you think? They are dead cell or the
dead
live
cell. Dead cell. The dead cell.
Yeah, yes. Sure, it's a dead cell. Because, in fact, it's not actually the cell. It is a cell wall because it comes from the plant cell. I think you already know that the plant cells, they have the cell wall surrounding. So what he saw is, in fact, is just the cell wall. It's not the actual cell, right? And of course, it's more far than the living cell. It's not the living cell. So who is the first scientist who observed the living cells? Do you know? Oh, maybe this scientist is not as famous as Robert Hooke for us, but for the scientist in over the world, maybe he is even more famous than Robert Hooke. His name is Leeuwenhoek. Another Hooke, but another way to write the name. So Antoine van Leeuwenhoek is the scientist who firstly observed the living cell. And this is a microscope also invented by Leeuwenhoek. So you see, it is very different to the microscope invented by Robert Hooke. Can you imagine where is the position that he placed his sample to observe on this microscope? Where?
I suspect that it would be the needle right there.
Yes, yeah, on the top of the needle here. In this is the place where he put his sample. For example, a drop of water, or a drop of blood, or um, something, um, some solution. The other solution he collected from the environment around him, surrounding. So um, through this microscope, he observed many types of cell, a single cell organism, but like the red blood cell or the sperm cell. Also, he observed the bacteria, but he called them little animalcules. Little animalcules. He called all of these cells he observed by these words. So this is a drawing of the sperm cell he observed through this microscope. So Leeuwenhoek is the first scientist who observed the living cell. And also there is agreement issue, but some scientists say for them, Leeuwenhoek is the first scientist who discovered the cell, not Robert Hooke. Of course, it is an argument, and there is something always it have this kind of compassion in the scientist field. But I think it's not so important who is the first discover the cell. Even Robert Hooke or Leeuwenhoek, both of their research also have very high value in the cell research. So in the 7th century, the cell was first discovered, and from this time, many things involving in the cell structure was discovered and found out by many researchers during the 17th and the 18th century. For example, you can see in 1683, Leeuwenhoek also views the other, similar as I said, they observe the bacteria, sperm, and blood cell belong to the animal cell and the bacteria. And in the 19th century, Robert Brown was first to identify the nucleus as an important cell component. In this table, okay, I will go to this first, and we will go back to the previous slide. So in this table, maybe give you more overview of the historical landmarks in the determining of the cell structure from the time Robert Hooke public or reported about his discovery of cell to the next century. In the 18th or 19th century, many cell compartment or cell component was discovered by the scientists. So in the 17th century, only the cell was observed until the 19th century, from 1833 to 1898. You can see many cell components like cell nucleus, or the mitochondria, or the cytoskeleton, or the Golgi apparatus were discovered during this time. So based on this, the cell theory was made during the 18th and 19th century. So based on the discovery of the scientists, they they conducted in the two statements. So the first is that all organisms are made of cells because they observe the animals, they observe the plant cell and the microorganisms like bacteria, and they found out that all of the organisms are made of the cell. So that is the first statement of the cell theory. And also, the second one come after, and they state that the cell is the basic unit of life. So that is the two statement of the cell theory during that time. But the big question at this moment is that where do cells come from? Where do cells come from? And if I ask you now, where do cells come from? So I don't ask about the what or where the first cell come from, okay? But regularly, where do cells come from? Do you know? Now in our real life, where do cells come from? We will not say something about the Big Bang explosion and the first RNA molecule was made, and then the membrane surrounding, and then the first cell appear. No, we will not talk about that. We are not talk about the appearance of the first cell in the earth, but we ask about the regularly
Cells come from organism.
Cell come from organisms. Okay. Yeah, it's also right, but I need can you say more correctly about the cell, which way the cell come, where does it come from? Of course, from organisms, but if you are, for example, from our body, okay, just think about our bodies. We are multicellular organisms. So where the cell come from? Exact where the cell come from?
The cells comes from by pre-existing cells by cell division.
Yes. Yeah. Well done. I think it's not very difficult question, right? But maybe the question makes me confused because it's quite obvious that the cell come from pre-existing cell, or they come from the cell divisions. So the cell exists and then they make the division, or they can produce the other cell. So we can understand now very easy, and it's something like it must go in this way, right? But at this moment, these are because of the limitation of the technique. So the scientists, they don't understand about this. They don't know where the cell come from. They didn't observe the cell division. So that is a big question at this moment. Where do cells come from? And there is a very big competition about the answer of this question. We will come back in 10 minutes, okay? Now it's the time for the short break of the lesson. So see you